Future viewers, welcome to the first Gratuitous Space Battles video. I'm Regdren, and next to me is my brother Stone of Triumph.
Hello, and this is a very aptly named game, as you're about to see.
Yes, let's dive straight into a battle, sort of. First we gotta select our race, and since this is a more or less fresh file, we only have one available, the Federation. Could you describe the Federation in a few words?
Capitalist Star Trek.
Capitalist Star Trek. Fair enough. The text says, "The Galactic Commerce Federation may not have the largest space fleet, but it remains the dominant economic force in the galaxy. Their free market philosophy extends right up to individual spaceship captains, who are billed for every shot fired, and credited for every verified kill. Technically, the Commerce Federation has no navy, and its collection of armored spaceships merely form part of its contract enforcement department."
Yep. This is your default race, and as such they don't really have any special, unique weapons or anything like that.
But not any huge gaping weaknesses either.
Correct.
Well, I've already gone through the tutorial and got a small amount of currency from that, but it's so basic that it's not really worth talking about here.
It's a tutorial, who wants to see that?
Yes, well, this is where most of, I'd say around 40% of the work towards victory happens.
Plans made in a starbase can win a battle 1,000 light years away.
Mm-hmm. What we do here is deploy our ships and select their orders.
You see, Gratuitous Space Battles isn't a game where you micromanage ships, it's more of a kind of programming-style game.
Yes, I've heard it described as tower defense, but since all of the units move, I'm not quite sure how apt that is.
Now, it has more in common with like some older games, like I think it was Robo Rally or something like that, where you put together a lot of like if-then conditions for what your ships do.
And there's some nice options for this. For example, if there's a ship that you like to have just one particular set of orders, you can have it save whatever you've already assigned to it, and any ships you summon from then on will have those orders. So you decide what it's going to attack and at what range, and other stuff, such as how it interacts with other ships on your team or the enemy team, formations, escorting other ships, and all kinds of fun stuff. A good set of orders can make a pretty big difference.
It also keeps your frigates from being blown up instantly.
Yes. Frigates, using them effectively is actually kind of advanced, and this is just the first mission, so we're not going to get too far into that.
But we are going to use fighters at least, right?
Yes, we are going to use fighters. The big ships I'm bringing forth are cruiser, which I'd say are the foundation of a fleet, the most important ships. But not the only important ships. I am going to bring some light fighters to serve as a screen. These are designed to shoot down other fighters, and as such I'm going to have them escort the frontmost cruisers of my formation.
Yes.
And this is how it's done.
It's a fairly simple scheme. It doesn't require like any advanced stuff to give the orders you want. Whether or not they work, well, that's another matter.
Indeed. But I highly recommend giving fighters escort duty, because otherwise they'll just fly into the middle of the enemy fleet and probably get vaporized immediately.
It's a possibility.
Well, I think we've got our basic formation ready. We've got our basic orders ready. I guess I'll give a very vague idea of what these do. The backline nuclear kitten, I don't actually...
We do not pick these ship names.
No, they are assigned automatically, and they are given the correct amount of dignity. This is a long-range artillery missile boat.
Yes.
Well, if you can call a cruiser the size of a shopping center a boat.
Yes.
These pulse cruisers up here are more close-range DPS sort of things, and the beam cruisers to the sides are more of a middle ground, can kind of handle a fight at closer range, but it's best when there's some interference in there.
Correct.
And as for the enemy, I don't know, who cares? Let's find out.
Yes, the difficulty affects the enemy deployment, and on the hardest difficulty, you don't get to see what the enemy is deploying.
Although for practical purposes, you just do a very quick run to look at their formation yourself.
Yeah. Okay, at the top we have a ticker that gives you a general idea of what's going on with your ships and the enemy's ships.
It's all fluff, but it's fun fluff.
Now,
remember what I said about not sending your fighters into the middle of an enemy fleet right at the start?
well, here's where we see the problem with that.
Yeah, my escort fighters are shooting them down quite nicely.
And that's good too, because fighters can get under a shield bubble.
Yes. And that's also why it's good to invest in at least some armor for your ships.
More details on how armor works later.
Actually, let's do shield, armor, and hull right now, since it's so important to the game.
Okay, shields have a capacity that can regenerate slowly.
And they also deflect certain kinds of weapons harmlessly. How good they are depends on the shield, but they are generally a hard counter against certain kinds of weapons, like beam lasers, for the most part.
Yes.
And their health is not bad. It's a middle-of-the-road sort of health. They can absorb some hits even if they aren't completely absorbed.
Now, this one has lost shield, so now it's going down to armor, which is...
Armor is a little complicated.
Yeah, basically armor has a capacity and also a threshold. And a threshold can deflect certain kinds of attacks harmlessly as long as there's enough armor to maintain the threshold, and this cruiser has lost all of that.
Yes, armor is almost an all-or-nothing thing for a lot of situations. The moment you take any amount of armor damage, the amount of weapons that can deflect right off of it decreases. And often just putting a little bit of armor is almost the same as having none, since it doesn't stop a whole lot of stuff.
And hull as well, that's when you start taking component damage.
Yes, that's when you start taking damage that can actually stop you from doing stuff.
And when you lose all of that, explosions.
Explosions happen.
By the way, explosions have a damage blast radius.
Yes, just one more of those little effects. Also, if you're escorted by fighters, well, they tend to get freed up and start attacking on their own. This is less bad than at the start when all of the enemies are grouped up and functional and stuff.
So you've appeared to have lost your close-range cruisers, but...
That's not necessarily the end of it, although I need to take down this guy's shields and armor pretty fast if my fighters are going to do anything. Also, losing ships is just a thing in this game. You don't need to worry too much about it unless you lose.
There's no strategic metagame in gratuitous space battles.
At least not in the battle types that we're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's also worth mentioning that hull health is pretty high, actually, compared to shield health and armor health.
It's just that when you take hull hits, you start losing the ability to do things, like move.
Also, unlike shields or armor, hull health doesn't ever deflect anything. So we're back down to 3v3, and it's actually looking a little bit dicey now.
I think you're going to win.
Okay, fair enough. That's fairly bold, considering that this isn't exactly a pre-recorded video. By the way, these ships in the back actually have pretty good anti-fighter defense.
Yes.
But after taking a closer look, I think my brother is correct. We seem to have more intact stuff than they do. They haven't really done anything to my artillery missiles in back. Now, the DPS of long-range stuff is actually not that great, which is why I'm a little sad that I lost my pulse cruisers so early.
Yep.
But I think a better formation and possibly better orders could have helped fix that.
Yes.
Alright, well let's turn up the battle speed now.
Since the outcome is not actually in doubt.
Well, it is in doubt a little, but less stuff is happening at once.
Yes.
I think what's going to happen is I'm going to... Well, okay, I already have lost that cruiser. And we're going to sort of collapse on these last two.
Yes.
Except that our defenses are better off than theirs.
In that you have them.
Yes, that is a difference. And by the way, having a really close battle like this is actually encouraged by the game mechanics.
More on that after we get the mission results.
Yep.
Yes, the thing about that enemy cruiser type is that they have a lot of slots for weapons, but not a huge amount for devices, so they can't carry many heavy weapons.
Yeah. You need to have things like power generators and crew compartments to support that sort of thing.
So, the most important phases in this are design and planning.
Yes. Well, you don't actually have any input whatsoever during the battle, so I guess that would make sense. Also, the game has a mechanic to stop one enemy fighter from flying around your last cruiser or whatever forever. When a side gets reduced below a certain percentage of forces, like I think they have that right now, the battle is just declared in one side's favor anyway.
Correct. Okay, now, about honor.
About honor. Now, we got some honor here. I had already tried out this mission before, but your job is to undercut your budget as much as possible to earn currency.
Yes, you have a budget to begin every battle, and the difference between the maximum budget and the budget of ships you deploy is how much currency you get for a map.
Now, there are a couple of things to note about things like most effective and least effective. First of all, this is talking about damage dealt. It might not talk about things like the damage prevented. For example, who knows what would have happened if I let the enemy fighters do whatever they wanted.
It wouldn't have helped.
It wouldn't have helped. And also, even with that in mind, it's talking about most and least effective for this particular battle.
Yes.
A different battle with different setups might be, well, a different story.
Yes.
So, that takes care of this battle in hard mode. We'll go to the highest difficulty in just a minute. But first, we have a message from our sponsors. Yes, this is from Beam Laser Phaser Mazer Incorporated. My understanding is that they just combined names after a couple of mergers.
Correct.
Well, our first product, the Cruiser Photon Beam. Take it away.
There are many reasons to choose one energy beam over another. It's a trade-off between weight, cost, power, crew needs, and destructive power. This one has a purple beam. Proton beam. It's purple. Proton beam may not be purple in certain gas clouds, nebulas, or resonant asteroid fields. Do not fire proton beam at any celestial body created by the collapse of a star.
And on the rarely used defensive branch, the Guidance Scrambler Beam. People firing missiles at your ship think they're so clever, but you can show them who's smarter by scrambling their guidance systems with this anti-missile beam gizmo. Do not aim Guidance Scrambler Beam at your friends, even though it seems like it might be funny.
Yeah, the thing about missiles is that they're generally equally effective against all kinds of defenses, but they can be intercepted on the way there.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that can go wrong with them, as we will find out when we look at the advertisement for Missile Co. Now, speaking of missiles, this ship is the one that has all of the missiles. Its design is fairly straightforward. Bunch of missile launchers, and the basics needed to get it moving and into the battle.
Correct.
I might add a couple of different things to its spare slots up forward once I unlock them, but as I said, since this is a fresh file, we have minimal unlocks.
Yes.
I used the points I got from the tutorial to unlock the purple beam, by the way. And purple beam is the best beam because it is much better at piercing shields than the standard beam laser. The thing is, beam lasers are usually strong against armor and not so strong against shields.
But the proton beam has just enough shield penetration to damage pretty much any shield you'll come across.
In fact, there's only one shield, a specialized shield, that can defend against them, and that's not very commonly used. This is the ill-fated pulse cruiser of last time, although ill-fated by my decisions. The thing about cruiser lasers is that they have very good damage per second, they pierce shields just fine, and they need a little extra help to start damaging armor, but not that much extra help.
Yes.
I have beam defenses here, and enough armor to... well, okay, enough to resist enemy cruiser lasers, and that's about it. Armor is weird. It's possible, if you're really dedicated, to make basically an all-armor ship that can stop just about anything, but then it's missing things like weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we have the beam frigate, which...
That's the beam cruiser.
I'm sorry, beam cruiser. We're not using frigates yet. This one is using those purple beams that we talked about, and a couple of missile launchers in the back. And it's important that this placement is done the way it is, because the game actually takes into account your ship length when determining weapon range and stuff. And some of these cruisers are pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe that just about wraps it up for the description of what I'm using so far, and we'll get into a little more depth later on.
Yes.
Next, expert level. Now, we just barely won last time.
Yes.
We need to kind of refigure what we're doing. Like, maybe pull these cruisers back so that they don't dive quite as far or deep into the fray right away.
Mm-hmm.
We should also check the range. Unfortunately, the range we have set is just about enough to cover our best weapon plus a little extra distance for the size of our ship. So we can't change that a whole lot.
Right.
This missile ship stays basically the same. Maybe we'll try to add a different kind of fighter, though. Because unlike the light fighters with tiny lasers designed to damage other fighters, this one can start damaging enemy armor and hull, although it's not great against shields.
Now, the reason you don't have a full squadron here is because you also have a limited number of pilots.
Yes. This was a number that you could freely ignore in Gratuitous Space Battles 2. But we don't talk about that game so much. Don't buy that game, it's not great. So, this is a small change, but who knows? Maybe it'll make a difference. And remember, a large part of this game is observing your previous fight to see what you should change to either win the fight in the first place, or what you can scale back to gain more honor the next time around. Speaking
of which, I think you should... What's its attack priority against fighters versus frigates?
What,
The rockets.
The rockets? It's designed to basically not attack fighters, attack frigates a decent amount of the time, and also cruisers.
Alright.
Let's give this a try.
Let's see what happens.
And we'll set it at 2 times speed immediately, because otherwise, you know, you can tell what's going on, more or less.
Yeah, the thing is, rockets are really only effective against frigates.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly effective against frigates.
Yeah. They're also a nice extra bit of damage against cruisers that have lost their armor. And this is where pulse cruisers work out really well, because there are a lot of cruiser weapons that have trouble hitting frigates, but not the pulse guns. And those 2 frigates at the bottom are also done, and this is also a reason why you probably shouldn't send your frigates out up front. Technically, they can be fast enough to avoid certain things, but there's always things that can go wrong as well. And when something goes wrong with the frigate, it goes bye-bye. It looks like my pulse cruisers are holding up better than last time. I don't know if that's because of the different formation. Oh, that's that electric effect is EMP, which means it can't do anything for a little while. However, that's something we're going to explain later. Anyway, looks like the ships have all kind of grouped up towards the bottom here, and I don't know what they're doing, but they're all concentrating on one ship and all kind of getting the tar beat out of them.
Yep.
So this looks like actually not as close a battle as last time. I didn't change that much. Also, you see all those hull -3s and stuff? That's what happens when fighters can go loose and hit as much as they want. And we're gonna see it over on Magnificent as well. Man, that's ugly.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got a chance to show this off, because I was afraid that the fighters might get killed on the expert mode as well, since it's supposed to be harder, but now you can see they actually do a ton of damage when given a chance.
Mm-hmm. But you have to make an opening for them.
That is true. They are tricky to use. They take some planning if you're going to use them anything other than a screen against other fighters. Well, I think that in this case, I could remove the rocket fighter and possibly get more honor from the battle. That's the sort of optimization that is part of the fun in this game.
Yep.
And as for the other part of the fun, which I kind of glossed over at our commercial break, let's design a small ship just to show you the process.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned that I didn't use frigates before because they're kind of tough to keep alive and they need some specific design and orders. Let's try something fairly simple. Let's try a plasma artillery frigate.
Okay.
I know, plasma artillery doesn't sound like a simple thing, but trust me. Now let's take a look at the hulls first. Now, this Puma frigate seems like it would be ideal because it has a power output boost, which is nice for just about everything, and 4 hard points, which seems pretty nice for artillery. Some designs have 3, for example. But the details can be the problem if you'll take a look at the weapon arcs. You see those things in the back? Those
yes.
Lines that constrict where you can shoot? This means that this frigate cannot really concentrate all of its guns on one enemy. That seems like a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, gotta pay attention to things like that. Gratuitous Space Battles loves giving you something that looks great until you examine it closer. So let's try this more expensive Fox frigate hull. Now this one has firing arcs we can work with. So let's put on them plasma launchers.
Hey, you kind of need people to do that.
Oh yeah, or we need crew of some sort. There is such thing as robot crew. But let's...
Not for frigates.
Oh yeah, only for cruisers. We also need power, so let's get a power generator on there. Let's get a couple of basic engines. For artillery, we don't need super speed. And, let's see. It's important, or at least advisable, to put at least a shield generator, even if it's not that great.
Yes.
And maybe 1 unit of armor for this. And that leaves crew. Now, here we run into a bit of a problem, because while plasma launchers don't require a huge amount of power, surprisingly, they do require a considerable amount of crew, which means even a crew module 2 is not enough. We can put 2 on here, but this makes it a little bit, I don't know. We need to keep cost into account, and I'm not sure that this is exactly what I'm looking for here.
Oh, it's not that expensive.
Well, yeah. But the thing is, I was hoping to have only 1 crew module, so let's actually go back and take a look at the 3 hardpoint frigate.
Let's see, Federation...
Yep, there it is. Well, This is also a lower cost hull, which is nice. 2, 3. We got the engines. We got the power generator. We got our defenses. And I think, let's see.
Yeah, that provides 78 crew.
Yep, we got just enough to fit that one crew module. And now we've got a frigate that fires from fairly good range, ignores any shield and almost any armor that we're going to run into, and we can field 4 of these for the cost of 1 cruiser.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you have a free module.
Yeah, but I don't have to use it.
Fair enough.
The game will warn you if you have modules open, but there are some reasons to not do that. As we've talked about, cost is the main restrictive factor for a lot of stuff. And also, you know what, I'm thinking of replacing the missile cruiser with a number of these things next time, since...
Sure, let's give that a try.
Yeah, let's try that next time. Well, let's not save over our Fed Beam model, though.
Yes.
Let's just call this the Plasma Frigate.
Yes, the thing about Plasma, though, is that it doesn't have the greatest hit rate and it's slow firing.
Yeah, there's always drawbacks, although I will say that the Frigate Plasma Launcher has much better accuracy than the Cruiser Plasma Launcher. So this is a frigate that's made to fight against cruisers. It will not hit other frigates with those things. Okay, so we got our thing to try out next time. I hope that you all enjoyed our first Gratuitous Space Battles video. Don't worry, there'll be plenty more things to talk about.
There will be plenty of space battles.
So many space battles. Well, see you next time, everyone.
See ya!